Hi, I'm Doug Sovereign from KCBS Radio. Welcome to a forum of candidates running for the Assembly District 15 office. Today's forum is sponsored by the Contra Costa Elections Division, Contra Costa Television, the League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley, and the League of Women Voters of West Contra Costa County. We're recording these roundtables here in the studio of Contra Costa Television. The candidates are Buffy Wicks and Doreen-Beckles. We drew lots before the show to determine the speaking order, so we will begin with Buffy Wicks. Thanks for being with us, both of you. And my first question, we'll start with you, is why are you running for this office, and what makes you the best choice for it?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm running for this seat because I believe right now we're in a pretty critical moment in our nation's history. Not to be hyperbolic about it, but you look at what's happening in politics across the country. You look at with the election of Donald Trump, the fact that we have a president who wraps himself around a white nationalist flag is disturbing. But also you look at what's happening right here in California, the fact that our math and reading scores for third graders is 43rd in the nation. The fact that in the Bay Area we've seen a huge increase in homelessness in the last couple years. People can't afford housing. We need more investments in public transportation. You know, we have a lot of concerns around our environment. These are some of the issues that I'm running on and that I care about. You know, I come from a very humble upbringing. You know, I grew up in a trailer, born and raised here in California. I went to community college. You know, I had a ladder up that enabled me to be a girl who grew up in a trailer and work at the White House. And I think everyone should have that ladder up, those opportunities. And, you know, I've been endorsed by George Miller, Barack Obama, Irma Anderson, a lot of great leaders here, a lot of great organizations, labor unions, Planned Parenthood, and others. And I'm excited about the idea of going to Sacramento and building the necessary coalition to create that equitable social safety net that I think everyone should have access to.
All right, thank you. And Doreen-Beckles, why are you running for Assembly, and what makes you the best candidate?
I'm running for a state assembly because I'm seeing, you know, we're all seeing the gap between those who have not. And that gap is widening more and more every day. I'm running because we've made some significant gains and victories in Richmond, and I'd like to be able to take those victories to Sacramento. And those victories include providing more stability for homeowners and renters. We were the first city in the state of California to bring forward rent control, the first rent control policy in 30 years. We are the first city to move forward a $15 an hour minimum wage. We were the first city to bring forward security and second chances for formerly incarcerated by banning that question, banning that box that asks the question that oftentimes prevents people from gaining the employment that they need. But I'm also running because we are in critical times right now, and we need strong, bold, progressive policies in the state. And as a person who takes no corporate money, I'd be the one to do that best.
There's so many issues to touch on in this district, and for the people of the East Bay, you brought up income inequality. What can you do in the Assembly, different from the local level in Richmond, to address poverty? We have such an incredible poverty rate in California, right. Poverty and income inequality. Right.
Well, it starts by electing elected officials who are going to always, in every policy decision, put the needs of the people, put the needs of the planet above corporate profit. And that's how we do it. We also have to be committed to bringing forward a living wage for all of our residents. And in my platform, I talk about increasing the $15 an hour minimum wage to a $20 more livable wage. And so when we have elected officials who are going to always put the needs of the people over profit, we can actually, through a movement, not through one elected official, but through a movement, bring forward the kind of income equality and equity that we're striving for as a community, as communities.
As well as California may be doing, one of the criticisms of the government we have now is that income inequality and the incredible poverty rate. What would you do in Sacramento to address that?
Sure, and you look at California, we have the highest poverty rate when you take into account cost of living, almost at 40% here in California, and yet we're one of the wealthiest nations in the country. We have the highest concentration of billionaires and millionaires in this state. So a couple things. One, education, making sure that all children, all adults have access to quality education. There are a lot of racial inequities within our education system. In terms of education, we're 47th out of 50th in standard of living for children right now in California, so investments in education education at both K through 12 higher ed and early childhood. Secondly, making sure we have a strong labor movement and we're supporting workers' rights. I've been endorsed by about 14 or 15 labor organizations, so I think that's important. The third thing is supporting our small businesses. Small businesses are majority women, women of color, making sure they have the technical assistance that they need, making sure they have access to capital so they can be successful. And the last thing I'll say, specifically around income inequality, is, there was a bill that I believe DeSaulnier put forth a couple years ago that didn't pass, but I would reintroduce this, trying to narrow the pay gap between the highest paid CEOs and the lowest paid people in that company, and providing tax incentives to narrow that gap. That's what I think we ultimately have to do, but I think this is also connected to housing policy and a lot of other issues as well.
And housing is what I want to talk about
Sure.
next. What needs to be done? I mean, there's so many different things that we can get into some of the details, but what would you do in the Assembly to help Oakland, Berkeley, Richmond, and the other cities in the district deal with, first of all, affordable housing, the lack of affordable housing?
Well, there's no doubt, you ask anyone, we have to build more housing. We need to build more subsidized low-income housing, but also middle-income and market-rate housing. I also support building housing, workforce housing for teachers, which I know Tony Thurman's been a big champion on, which I fully support. I believe in transit-oriented housing, building around our BART stops. That also means investments in BART. If you go to San Francisco at 8:30 on a Tuesday morning on BART, it's a mosh pit, right? So we need more investments in BART as well. But I do believe we need to build more housing. We also have to do everything we can to guard against displacement and make sure that renters aren't getting kicked out of their places. And so it's sort of stopping the homelessness before it starts, stopping the displacement before it starts. And there's a lot of ideas I have on that as well that I think we should discuss. I don't know if you want me to answer it in this question, but ideas around increasing the renter tax credit, providing a rental assistance fund for renters, things of this nature that I think that we need to do. But, I've been endorsed by East Bay for Everyone, which is a pro-housing organization, because of my positions on housing. I want to work with our other legislators. David Chu, who's chair of the Housing Committee in the Assembly, has also endorsed my candidacy. I want to be on the Housing Committee. This is an issue I want to tackle if I get this job.
Affordable housing, how do we create more? What does the state do everyone's talking about it. What do we do?
Well, we have to protect renters first and foremost, and that's why I'm a strong advocate for Prop 10, which is to the repeal of Costa Hawkins. That will really make a huge difference in this, stopping the displacement of people, particularly people of color, whose wages aren't keeping up with the cost of living, the cost of housing. But we also have to protect homeowners as well, because when you have stable communities, that benefits everyone. We also have to ensure that we deal with the root causes of homelessness, and there are so many different reasons. Wage, lack of the proper wage, mental health issues, substance abuse issues. We have to have political will to be able to provide the resources that these communities need. That's why I'm really proud to be endorsed by so many different housing advocates, renters organizations like the Berkeley Tenants Union, so many different organizations that are committed, grassroots organizations that are committed to keeping our residents safe by keeping them in their house.
Homelessness, as you say, and you started to touch on it too. Substance abuse, mental health, there's so many, it's such a complicated spectrum of issues that cause homelessness. What concrete things can be done at the state level? The safe injection site bill is on the governor's desk at the time we're taping this. Is that something that you would support?
I absolutely support that. Right now, when people don't have safe, those who are struggling with substance abuse, of course, you have to have the resources for them to get the support they need, the 12-step programs, et cetera, but it's happening, and so we should have safe places for people to be able to inject and sort of come off of the struggles that they're having with substance abuse. But we really have to have, as I said before, political will. And I'm a mental health specialist. I've been working in the mental health field for 30 years while living in the Bay Area. And I've really seen close up and personal the challenges that people have. And the challenges, again, leads right back to housing inequality, the huge gap of inability, rather, to be able to earn a living. And so in working with folks closely, I've seen so many of our centers, of our mental health services and resources. I've seen so many of them close, and we really have to bring those back to the communities.
What concrete, specific things would you champion in Sacramento to deal with homelessness?
On homelessness, yeah. And, you know, we've seen, I know in Alameda County, I think the numbers are similar here, a 40% increase in homelessness in the last 2 years. These are dramatic increases, right? So a couple things I think we need to do. One, we need more outreach workers. We're at capacity in terms of staff, so we need more outreach workers. Secondly, we need more drug and alcohol and mental health resources for folks. We need those wraparound services, which are very, very critical. The third thing we need is more rapid rehousing, temporary housing. There's a lot of research that shows that if folks get homeless, the quicker you get them off the streets, the easier it is for them to get into stability. So getting folks off the streets quickly is important. The fourth thing we need, and this is the hardest part, is the permanent, long-term, supportive housing for the homeless with those wraparound services. It's what costs the most, but you know what? We have a budget surplus. We need to be spending resources on things like this. The last thing I'll say, and Gavin Newsom has called for this, and I support it, and he's endorsed my candidacy. He's calling for a Secretary of Homelessness, almost a homelessness czar, whose sole mission is to make sure our federal, state, county, and city resources are being spent effectively, that we're addressing this as a regional issue. So we're providing not just the resources, but the leadership to ensure that we're tackling this like the state of emergency that it is.
You mentioned we have a budget surplus, and we do for now, but the governor has warned again and again we may not for long. And a lot of the solutions that you're both proposing cost money.
Yes.
So where do we get that money?
Sure.
Sort of continuing to raise taxes.
Sure.
How do we
Sure.
pay for all these things?
Yeah, we all want a lot of things, right? And I think we're both good progressive Democrats who want these things. So you can do two things. One, you can raise more money. And I think ways we can do that, I'm a big proponent of closing the commercial loophole on Prop 13, which will be on the ballot in 2020. Make Chevron, Transamerica, Disney, these large corporations pay their fair share. If we did that, it would be about $11.4 billion that could go back into the state budget. We should look at other potential taxes as well on higher earners, potentially on services, on financial transactions. I think we have to explore other revenue streams as well. The other way is to look at your current allocation of resources. So since the early 80s, we've had a 500% increase in corrections spending in California. You know, we've built 22 new prisons for one new UC campus. That's not how I would spend those resources. I think we can look at sentencing reform, other things we can do to ensure we can spend those resources more effectively in education and all the other issues that we care about.
There are a couple issues that came up there, but first of all, how do you pay for everything?
Yeah, you pay for it by taxing the rich, by reforming Prop 13. That's one way. The other way that you do that is you tax speculators. You tax vacant properties where we're seeing a lot of that out of country investors coming into neighborhoods and buying up those properties and leaving them vacant. Which destabilizes communities, and so you pay for it by doing that. And one of the things we've done in Richmond, and a lot of what I share with you is what we've already done. This is my track record. I'm not talking about what we can do, what I think we can do, but what we've done and what we've seen work in Richmond. And so we do have that on the ballot measure this November. We're going to have a vacancy tax, and we're going to be also taxing property transfers of properties over $1 million. And we are, again, the 5th largest economy in the world. We have the resources. We just, right now, don't have the political will, and that's what I bring.
So you talked about the possibility of higher taxes on high earners. You said you want to pass them. You've done it. We already have a higher tax on state income tax on high earners. We should go even higher. We should. And are you at all worried about the impact of that financially on those high earners, maybe leaving the state? Or
yeah, well, I think that California, is a leader throughout the country, and as California goes, so does the rest of the country. And this is the 5th largest economy in the world with the largest concentration of billionaires in the whole country. There's room for them to pay their fair share of taxes. And closing the tax loophole on corporations will bring in billions of dollars in extra revenue.
Do you share those same thoughts on the higher taxes?
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to put everything on the table. right? And figure out, we have priorities here. We have things we want to pay for. I believe in a social safety net. I believe government has a role to help people. These things do cost money, though, right? And we have to be realistic about that. We also have to figure out, where can we get pockets of resources? How do we spend them? What does that look like? I do think as we head into next year, hopefully the economy will still be in a good place. We'll have some surplus funds that we can work with. I think Gavin shares a lot of these similar values and will want to support a lot of these things. So I think at the executive branch, we'll see a drive for a lot of the things I think that we're talking about. And I want to work with Gavin and with others in the legislature to make sure that we're spending this money wisely. But I do think we have to explore additional revenue streams, as I said, Prop 13, other things, and want to work with policymakers in Sacramento to figure out what's the right way for us to get these additional revenue streams. How do we politically do it, right? Because this will require either ballot measures or legislative fixes, which you need political pressure for and will for, and also I've taken no corporate money in this race, which I'm very proud of, because I want to go to Sacramento to be beholden to the residents of AD 15.
Ms. Beckles mentioned repealing Costa Hawkins.
Yep.
Do you support Prop 10 as well?
Sure, and I'm glad you asked that question. So I believe rent control is very important. It's one of the safety nets that's allowing for many families across the East Bay to stay in their homes. I also agree with the sentiment, the slogan of Prop 10, that the rent is too damn high. We see that. I don't think Prop 10 is going to be a fix on that challenge, though. I share concerns along with the building trades labor unions, along with the NAACP, along with affordable housing experts, people who build affordable housing, that there could be an unintended consequences, that this could exacerbate our housing crisis because it could stop the construction of new homes and incentivize developers to just go build condos and not apartments, right, thereby taking more rental units off. So I share those concerns. I strongly believe we need reforms around Costa Hawkins. I support a rolling date. I support anti-gouging legislation. I support a whole suite of things to help renters. But I do have concerns around it having a negative impact on the housing crisis and making our housing crisis even worse.
So you're going to vote for Prop 10 or not?
No.
You're going to vote no on Prop 10. You'll vote yes. Okay, that's the first. Well, actually, and do you want to respond to that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I support. I not only agree with the slogan that the rent is too damn high, but I actually support it and work with all of these tenant right organizations who help deliver, that message. It's really just is one of the ways that we help to keep people in their homes. When you have students living in a one-bedroom, 5 people in a one-bedroom, when we see people who are working 40 hours a week living out of their cars, when we see families, single parents with their children going from home to home, which that kind of instability really does not allow children to be able to learn. When you see that, and I see it every day because these are the people that I work with as a mental health specialist for Contra Costa County doing wraparound services. I see this every day, and so Prop 10 is just one of the ways that we help to keep people in their homes, and that's why I support it wholeheartedly. And it's not true that it's going to stop builders from building more. It's a false statement, and we've seen that when we tried to increase the minimum wage. They said businesses would leave Richmond. That hasn't happened.
And for the voters at home, Costa Hawkins is the law that restricts rent control and where it can be imposed and on which units, and Prop 10 would repeal that. That's the first significant policy difference I think we've heard between the two of you. You're both left of center Democrats. Other than that, can you tell me one issue where you differ significantly from Ms. Wicks?
Yes, I also, in addition to the Costa Hawkins, we also differ greatly, significantly when it comes to single-payer healthcare for all system. I believe that we can do it. I believe that we have the resources and the funds to be able to provide a healthcare for all system for all of California. And my opponent believes that we have to do it incrementally, that it's not really possible. And in the 5th largest economy, I'm going to keep saying that, we can do it, because right now we're paying about $365 billion to only provide services for a few, where with a single payer for all system, we can actually cover everyone. Everyone can be covered, and the ACA was fine, but it's not. It was it's a Band-Aid because people still have large deductibles. People still are going into debt, and people are still having to foreclose on their property because they can't afford the care that they need.
Is she right, and why shouldn't we have single payer for all?
I support single payer for all, actually, and Medicare for all, and frankly, it should be a federal program. I think California can lead the way, and the ideas that I've proposed since the very beginning of this campaign, and I've worked on ACA, so I've worked on healthcare policy. Here's what I think we should do. One, while we work towards a single payer system, make sure our healthcare system here works, right? So that means ensuring that the exchange that we have here is healthy, no pun intended, fixing our reimbursement rates, which are you talk to Planned Parenthood, you talk to community health providers, they're very concerned about the reimbursement rates, so we have to fix that. Ensuring that our immigrant communities are covered under health care, that's another critical component of this. I support and would advocate for a public option to be on the exchange. You know, we passed this in Nevada, the Republican governor vetoed it, but basically what you could do is put a public option on the exchange, sort of a Medi-Cal option anyone could join as an incremental step, so that in a 2020 environment, when we have, you know, a better president to work with, President Kamala Harris or President Cory Booker or someone else to work with, we can then work with the federal government to implement a single payer system, because what we need from the federal government is a waiver to the tune of $200 billion. I don't think Donald Trump is going to allow California to experiment with single payer. We have to get him out of office so we have good political leadership, and then we can work with the federal government to do that. So that's a runway step approach, but you've got to bring all these different disparate folks together in order to do that, and you've got to have something that will actually pass, you know, and with the ACA, we moved the ball as far as we could to get that passed, right? It's not perfect, but let's build on it from there.
I want to ask you the same question I asked her, which is, apart from the ones we've discussed, can you point out a significant difference, policy difference between the two of you, where you differ from her?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a lot Javanka and I agree on. We're both progressive Democrats who've worked in progressive politics for a long time. You know, I think on the housing issue, we do have some differences. You've already outlined that in terms of the Proposition 10. I'm a big believer we have to build more housing, build more affordable housing. I know Javanka has taken votes that she abstained from an affordable housing vote and other things that I would have voted differently on. I'm a big supporter, and you know, she said we don't have a housing shortage crisis. I do think we have a housing shortage crisis, so I think that's an issue that we do have differences on. I think politically we also have some differences. You know, Javanka supported and you know, pushed, you know, praised and pushed out on social media her support for Jill Stein, and made comments to the effect that, you know, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were the same person. I worked for Hillary Clinton. I believe she would have been a better president than Donald Trump. You know, so I think there are some political differences as well as some policy differences.
Do you want to respond to some of that?
Absolutely.
I'll give you the opportunity.
In Richmond City Council, we actually have some projects on the way right now, affordable housing projects, several hundreds, actually, over 700 new projects. So I've never voted to not build affordable housing, and I never said that we don't have a housing shortage. I said we have an affordability crisis, not a housing crisis. So that's absolutely different. And the whole point about, you know, Jill Stein is, I think that people have a right to vote for who they want. I believe that you know, California was never an issue whether or not Hillary Clinton would win, and for people to be able to vote their conscience as a 35-year-plus Democrat, I think that I applaud everyone who was able to vote for their conscience. And so she won in California. My vote did nothing to do that. And so I think it's always important that we, you know, clear up misunderstandings about, and especially when it comes to the differences that we have. And I've always been, and I continue to be, and will always be, a supporter for building affordable housing. Happy that we have over 700 coming in Richmond.
So just to clarify, do we have a shortage of housing, do you think?
The statement is, we don't have a housing shortage, we have a housing affordability shortage, and that's what I've said in comments.
Okay,
yes.
Now a real nuts and bolts question, because it's the one I get so much these days from voters, is the DMV. People are so frustrated with the DMV. What would you do to fix the DMV?
Well, our government has to work better for people. We've all experienced this, right? Going into the DMV, waiting for these long lines and dealing with this. And I think for many people, that's one of their main interactions with the state government. You know, so making sure that we have leadership at the top levels that care about this, that we're ensuring that, you know, where systems are broken, we're collecting data to understand where that breakdown is. More resources for the DMV, more technology for the DMV to be, you know, enabled for the process to be smoother. And I think real political will and intentionality around making sure that we have those things set up so that when folks do go experience the DMV, you know, they have a good experience, I think is very, very critical.
And we're almost out of time, so quick yes or no. Democrats blocked an audit of the DMV in Sacramento. Would you have supported that?
I would support an audit of the DMV.
What do you do about the DMV? First, would you support the audit?
I would support an audit, absolutely. You know, we have to have, again, political will, you know, and people complain about DMV all the time. In fact, in Richmond, we created a municipal ID program for our residents long before, you know, the state and DMV opened up the process for undocumented residents. And so we have some really innovative ideas coming out of Richmond that the state followed later. And so I am one to be able to move forward with these kind of innovative, progressive policies. And of course, yes, the DMV has a lot of work to do. And what I like to do, of course, is it's important that we talk to the people who are actually affected. That's how we get the best policies, and that's what we've done in Richmond.
All right, thank you both. Our time is up already, but thank you for answering some of these important questions that we have. We didn't even get to all of them, I'm sure, but now you will each have 1 minute to make a closing statement, and we will begin with Beckles.
Well, thank you so very much for tuning in and for being engaged in this political process. We are at a crossroads right now. We can continue in the direction where we have elected officials who are making policies based on building the bottom line of the billionaire class. We know we don't have health care for all right now because the Speaker of the House, a Democrat, blocked that from happening. And when you follow the money, you'll see that he took $400,000 from the pharmaceutical companies. We cannot continue to elect people who are going to be basing policies based on profit over people. I take no money from corporations, and I will continue to do that. And it's always important, just like with Anthony Rendon, follow the money. Follow the money on the opposition, where she's getting her money from. And I don't know President Obama, but I do know you. I know AD 15. I know the people who are homeless and losing their homes. I know the workers who are struggling for fair contracts. And I'd be honored to have your vote because of my track record as an 8-term experienced city council member. You can count on me to do the bidding for you in Sacramento.
Thank you so much. And now a closing statement from Buffy Wicks.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm honored to be here. I've worked in progressive politics my entire adult career. You know, I'm someone who come from humble upbringing and worked my way up to the White House. I've worked on big public policy issues. I helped pass the Affordable Care Act. I helped create the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We've run a grassroots campaign here in AD 15. I've taken no corporate money in this race. I've had over 180 house parties across this district. I've been in living rooms all across this district. I've been endorsed by George Miller, by Irma Anderson, Mayor Tom Butt, Mayor Chris Kelly, Myrna De Vera, a lot of support from Contra Costa County. But what I'm most proud of is the organizing work that we have done. I'm running because I believe we need to send someone to Sacramento who's not just going to vote the right way, but who's going to fight the right way and who's going to lead the right way. This district deserves someone who can go there and build coalitions to pass public policies that solve these problems. I want to work with you. I want to fight alongside you. I want to go to Sacramento and achieve this because I do believe everyone should have the opportunity to grow up in a trailer and work at the White House or whatever steps they need to go up that ladder. So thank you so much for tuning in. Please go to buffywicks.com if you'd like more information. And if you want to host me at your house, I will show up. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you both. No, I'm going to... Sure. Say your website quickly.
Javanka.org.
Okay, thanks. That concludes our forum of candidates running for Assembly District 15 in the November 6th general election. And once again, those candidates are Buffy Wicks and Beckles. For more information on the candidates, visit the website, votersedge.org. You can visit their websites too. To view this broadcast online, please go to www.cocovote.us. I'm Doug Sovereign, political reporter at KCBS Radio. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to vote on November 6th.